very different states. And we'll have to sort through it. Must not have any dairy farmers here.
Yeah, I was thinking.
The sugar guys are smart enough to keep quiet.
Yeah, we've got just a little bit of
Just keep your head down. I've been telling them that for 2 years.
Go to war over conservation compliance, maybe no one will think about shooting.
Let's see, a good thing too, that you don't have too many dairy farmers here, so you kept the place too old, and all what's wrong.
I know. Well, we're trying to fix that. I've got a hell of a battle, because Boehner, he and I are going head on this deal. So I think I got him beat. So.
The other day, I wasn't you. I asked who feels as passionately about the dairy program as I think it might have been Cramer. Who feels as passionately about the dairy program as Colin does? He said the speaker. So that was
He wants to get rid of it just as bad as I want to fix it. So we'll have to sort that out.
I have another question regarding what Congressman Cramer just said. Is the Republican leadership as sick and tired of this farm bill and as eager to get done with it as two of them are?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's a matter of being sick and tired of it or a matter of feeling somewhat, I think it's safe to say somewhat beaten by it in some respects. And that politics does work. And sometimes it looks like it doesn't, and sometimes it does. I would say that last year was complicated, for example, by an election. It shouldn't be that way. It used to be that every now and then between working for the good of the people, you had an election. Nowadays, between elections, you might find a few days to work for the good of the people. So that's kind of the way things have gotten in politics. And I think that after last year, getting into a year like this where it is it isn't an election year, it's a long way from the next presidential election. I think they just have a little more of an appetite for it, quite honestly. But I'd also go so far as saying there's some people that have been pretty tough on leadership on this issue. And I've been one of them. That just said, look, we've got to have a farm. I mean, look at as I said earlier, look at the alternative. The alternative, from our philosophical standpoint, is worse than the bill that came out of the House Ag Committee last year, and it's even more worse than the one that's out now. So, no, I don't know if it's a matter of being sick and tired of it, but I do think it's a matter of accepting that this is right.
Yeah, people like Kevin putting heat on, but I would have to, you're maybe not aware, but some of your folks, they never do quit campaigning. And, I think Kevin will agree that this bill will not pass if I'm not for it, right?
There's no question about it. Listen,
So what do these geniuses do? Not Kevin, but his leadership. So they buy a billboard last Tuesday, and bring it over to my office in Detroit Lakes. Now, here's the guy that they need to get this bill done. So it makes you wonder what the hell they're up to. But anyway, so they buy this billboard, and it says, Congressman Peterson wants to put the IRS in charge of your health care.
I
And
mean, you don't.
I spent my private sector career taking on the IRS. But anyway, the point is, because I didn't vote to repeal health care 37 times, they came after me, because even though I voted against the health care bill, because I wouldn't vote to repeal it, I'm now in favor of it. And my position is, and it was at the time, 40% of the bill was good, 60% of it was bad. I voted against it. That's still the same thing today, and I'm not going to vote to get rid of the whole thing, because 40% of it needs to be done, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. So here they are, running ads, running this billboard around, So some of your folks over there, I would argue, really don't want to get this done. I'm tempted to send a press release out to Oregon asking why Greg Waldron wants to kill the farm bill. He's the guy that started this committee that came up with the bill. But anyway, if I were going to operate like the rest of the Democrats in Congress, and this happened, I'd walk away. That's what happens to all these other committees. But I'm not going to, we're going to get this thing done by whatever the hell they do. I don't care. But that's the problem in Washington. There is no time to legislate. I mean, it's the minute the election's over, they're after and even I got 61% last time. How much, did you get 61%?
No, I didn't.
But the problem is they beat all the other Democrats that are in Republican districts, and there's nobody else to go after. So on the list.
Congressman Howard Olson, I'm with Ag Country Farm Credit here in Fargo. You might have just answered my question here and say that no matter what, you're going to get it done. But what if the Farm Bill doesn't get done in the House? And besides some dairy or the dairy guys and some conservation, most of the farmers in this room are probably better off today with what we've got than an extension. But we have the potential for losing money for the next time around and so on.
Well,
what's the implications?
That's something I brought up to Boehner when we had this discussion after the election. That I said, look, with the exception of dairy in my state, we don't need this bill. We're better off with an extension. Farmers, because they got crop insurance with no changes. They got direct payments. Conservation is hurt. There's other things that are hurt, but farmers. Sugar is good. If you get an extension. Now you have people on his side that don't want an extension. That was a problem last time. But I think at the end of the day, if we don't get this done, what will happen is a reenactment of last year. When we'll get to December, the bill will expire in September for all of the crops except for dairy. So when you get to September, nothing really happened. But when you get to December, when dairy expires, then people are going to be doing these stories about how the price of milk is going to double. That's what happened last time. And then that'll cause people to extend the bill another year. Well, but we're at some point, they can only push us so far, and if they screw this thing up too much, we'll walk away from it. I mean,
You could do some benefits in an extension, right? They could change.
well, I mean, for the sugar guys, we don't have to go through a fight on the floor. We're going to have the program we want. Direct payments, I think most folks would say, they're really hard to justify, but, they work.
And then you lose a bunch of money by putting it off another year?
Well, it's hard to say. Right, we lost budget authority this year because when they rescored things, what's been projected in prices and so forth. But it depends. Say that prices went to $3, and corn went to $3. Then CBO rescore farm bill, it's going to score a lot higher. Even under the current law. So we do have some leverage there. If the food stamps expired, as the rest of the farm bill does, then this would get done. But it doesn't.
Yeah, Colin, you said about the healthcare deal, you agreed with parts of it and that 60% of it's bad. Is there any way that you could try to convince your colleagues to discuss that or try something?
No, because, they've chosen up sides and they will not admit that there's a middle ground. So the Republican position is, not all Republicans, but is that we need to get rid of the whole thing. Well, that's not going to happen. But first of all, the Senate's not going to do it. Second of all, Obama would never sign it. So this is until 2016, you might as well forget about this. You know, so they keep passing a law over in the House is getting rid of it. Well, on the Democrat side, there are problems with this bill. You know, Max Baca said it, you know, but they won't admit there's problems. And so what needs to be done is that we need to get together in the middle and fix some of this stuff, you know, and so it's going to work. Because I think we've got enough problems in healthcare. We can't afford another 15 years of doing nothing. It's going to eat us alive. And we got people out there that are hurting, that need access to health insurance. And I don't know Kevin's position, but I think one of the most important things that was in this bill was the exchanges, these health insurance exchanges, which is being set up in Minnesota now. But some states didn't do it. Now, I'm not talking about the subsidy of whatever that product is. I'm just talking about the exchange itself. What that does is it creates a big pool of people, of healthy people, sick people, maybe 1 million people in Minnesota in that exchange. It gives people a place where they can go buy insurance at a somewhat reasonable price. And it helps the people that are self-employed, that have 5-10 employees, that don't work for the government, don't work for 3M, don't work for some big company. That's going to help them, irrespective of whether they're subsidized or not or any of that stuff. That's what we've been doing with the federal employee for the last number of years. It works. And so you got 10, 20 companies that qualify to bid in that deal, and then that exchange sends this out to people, and they can pick out of those 10, 20 companies what insurance they want, you know, what plan they want. Well, that's a good thing that's in this bill. The fact that we cover pre-existing conditions, the fact that you can keep your kids on the policy until they're 26, some things like that. If you repeal this law, that would go away. You know, so there's things in here that we need to do.
That was the aspects you were talking about was good. And,
you know, and the subsidy, you know, I don't know how we afford that. You know, that's whole other issue. You know, and the issue about that we're subsidizing the current system by making it tax deductible, which some people raise as issues and so forth. But I think Kevin would agree. This thing is not going to get repealed.
One day, Colin probably doesn't keep a journal, but one day I was sitting with him on the floor. It was the day that we were debating, might have even been Ryan budget, I don't remember. And you might remember, she said, why don't you guys introduce a bill that repeals 60% of Obamacare, then I can support it too. And I thought, well, that's way too reasonable. Could we ever do something like that?
Well, that's what
But everybody, he's right, they've stated their claim, and now what's at stake is their pride. It's not even so much the policies in between this. I say it all the time in committee hearings. My gosh, witnesses come before a committee, and the whole purpose is to embarrass one side or the other. It's not to provide new information.
But I did talk to a small business owner today that has 12 employees, and it's working good for them. They've researched it enough, and they understand it enough, and they said it's going to work for them. People, on the other hand, that they have over 50 employees, it would be a problem.
Yeah, and that is a problem. And we don't. And one of the problems now is that we don't even know how this is going to be implemented because it's been fought so much that, you know, I had a guy come in to me and wanted me to help him figure out how this is going to work. Well, the rules haven't been even written, and we got to start implementing this thing in September. So, it's as Baca said, this is liable to be a train wreck. But part of the reason for it is that there's been such a fight against it that a lot of this stuff never got done. You know, but anybody that doesn't think that the healthcare needs some fixing, you know, I mean, it's not a perfect situation.
Congressman, my name is John Jacobson. I'm here today representing North Dakota Farm Bureau. And you gentlemen have heard it before a couple times today, and just want to reiterate again the number of phone calls and messages that we have heard from our members in North Dakota on the concern of tying crop insurance participation to conservation requirements. So I know where you sit. I just felt it was worthy of stating once again.
I'll go from Minnesota.
David is the chair of the FSA committee in Minnesota, so he's a high money.
I guess for those of you that think affordable care or whatever they call it, we went through in our family. My wife had cancer in 1972. From that point on, we could not get coverage. We had a pre-existing condition. You wouldn't live on the edge for many years without health coverage for your wife. We got it when she got to be old enough for Medicare, and now she's had cancer again. They had all those years and they've never done a damn thing about it. Now we finally got something, not perfect, but I can tell you that it got so bad at our house, I said, you try to find a company. And there was one agent after another came. And one day I was at home in the office, and the guy came and he had his policy, and he says, but I have to tell you, your wife isn't covered for cancer. I said, you know how good your policy is then? That is something the medical community, the government, everybody forgets about, that there were a bunch of us out there exposed to. What's the limit? There's no limit. I've seen what cancer can do to a family. Now, what I was going to say is, I read a lot. As I've gotten older, I read presidential history books. I read Team of Rivals this winter, Lincoln. If anybody thinks the government is kind of a mess, go read that. Went into the 1860 Republican Convention in Chicago. Abraham Lincoln was number 4. He came out of there with the endorsement. It wasn't all straight shooting when he got that thing. But he was an extremely caring, bright man. Just on this the time conservation, crop insurance, didn't we have that a while ago? Didn't that get decoupled, Colin?
Yeah, it did. I think it was in 96.
It was,
Yeah.
96.
Yeah, they had that before that.
Yeah. And
But, you know, we didn't have the blue dots and all of that other stuff that's gone on since then. And so that's what made people nervous, you know, about how things have been implemented over the years. And, you know, and not being able to get a resolution on these wetlands. You know, how long have we tried to figure out, you know, let's have a final say, okay, this is my wetlands, this isn't, and so we can move on. We haven't been able to get there. You know, now we're making progress, and we've got a new guy in Minnesota who's doing a good job and making progress, but we're still not there. And that's part of what people are concerned about, you know, is how this has gone in the past. And you know, I think they are valid to have concerns given what's happened, you know.
but we, you know, we've had Swamp Buster in place.
Yeah, it's been since 85.
1985. It's nothing new. It's been there. Interpretation, I don't think has changed too much, but it's there. And, you know, I deal with some Swamp Buster issues at the FSA level.
And the Minnesota law is stronger than the federal law. So even in Minnesota, even if it gets tied, you know, Minnesota's law is stricter than the federal swamp law. So to us, it's not as big a deal as it is in North Dakota.
But, you know, Brad's point on his experience.
Yeah, no,
That's real, and
I get it.
every year it seems like see, it's not just the regulation, but then the regulation creates a regulator. And regulators have various levels of zeal with which they regulate. And pretty soon, you know, rules are made on the fly. And this is real. This happens to people. Hey, listen, look at what we're dealing with today with our IRS and Department of Justice. And, you know, the laws don't change, but the zeal with which people carry out the laws does. And so there's a redelineation of wetlands that can occur, and you'll be in compliance one day, and guess what? The next day you're not, and suddenly you're not problems. These are the problems I see, you know, in addition just to fund balance.
Congressman, in our position on the State FSA Committee, the most excessive, I believe, violation we've seen in somebody's eyes was a 7/10 of an acre violation. And the penalty was well over $1 million. And everybody, until they got to us as State Committee, just said it's okay. and we put a stop to it and get other people to look at it and work it. After a while, it kind of went away because everybody made a mistake.
Yeah.
That's how excessive it is.
And I understand, yeah, you're right, but, and part of the thing too is, we had this with the recent roundtable that Senator Hogan did with our Maples. And that's just, they have so much power to this, you know, for themselves, as the regulator themselves, has so much power to change the rules on the fly or to adapt the rules on the fly. And then it becomes incumbent upon the farmers to prove themselves innocent. And really, it benefits the doubt out. So it's not and that's where I think that's thank you for sharing.
Anybody else?
Well, you had mentioned dairy farmers. Well, I'm a retired dairy farmer. I milked cows 40 years, and I sold my herd out in March of 18th of 2009. I know the exact date. And in November, I went in and had both my knees replaced. That's a bad part of dairy farming and extension barn. And but one thing, a lot of my neighbors have switched over to organic because they have a base price that can't get any lower than, and their organic creamers stick by it. And what hurts a lot of the other dairy farmers that are switching over to organic because their base price gets lower, 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 lower. And you said the dairy part, you know, dairy bill that you're working on is trying to make a more stabilized pricing. And the organic farmers are satisfied with their stabilized price because they can't get any lower than what the creamery says. And they stick by it. And that's why I've seen more and more going organic. And the guy that farmed my ground because I was organic, he was so happy that I was organic and he could get converted right away. Why is the fluctuation so bad?
Yeah, well, I mean, we put organic agriculture in the 2008 Farm Bill. First time it had been recognized. I created a subcommittee, you know, because there's a niche market there that has worked very well for people. But it's still a niche market. And if it gets too much, if everybody switched to it, it would collapse the market. That's the problem. You know, so you gotta, you know, it's only so far you can go. So what we're trying to do, you know, is make room for everybody, but what we're trying to do is give farmers the option to buy insurance above their feed cost. And you can buy between $4 and $8 coverage above your feed cost. And the more you higher the coverage, the more it costs you. You know, that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, so we can get away from this $20-some milk one year and $11 milk the next year. That's what's killing people. And that's why we're losing dairy farmers. Probably 09 was the worst year we've ever experienced that I can remember. That year you sold out probably had something to do with the price. So we're trying to avoid that. But the organic is a, you know, it's a good market. But they've had their problems too, and you've got to keep things in balance, and not everybody can do it. You know, and it takes 3 years, you know, to get certified, and all that stuff. But it, you know, some people have done well with it.
Ken Vasek with Minnesota Farmers Union, and just a comment from some farmers that are organic farmers that have talked to me about crop insurance. They're at a different level of cost and of price than the conventional, and they would like to be treated as a producer that's has different costs and different regime than the normal.
We're, to some extent, working on that in this bill. But the way that RMA operates, if you want to develop a new policy, you've got to go out and hire a consultant. And the consultant has to develop the policy because RMA won't do it. And that's what the organic people need to do. And they know that. And so one of the things that's in the bill that was put in committee that I supported This is one case where Lucas and I didn't agree, he didn't support it. But we won, is we set up an organic checkoff, which could be used to help develop the crop insurance. You know, so that, we're trying to help them, give them the tools to be able to, you know, build the risk management that they need for that industry. And, you know, I mean, we've got a bunch of the specialty crops that don't have insurance that they need. You know, the southern crops still don't have insurance, and that's their own fault. You know, they could have developed it, but they didn't. But we're making progress, and we got a lot more people covered today than we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And, you know, we're now a victim of our own success. We went through the worst drought we've gone through since the 30s, and we never had any significant request for a disaster. And that shows you that crop insurance worked. If it didn't work, we'd have had a big, huge political uproar to have a disaster. We didn't have it. And now we're being punished because it worked. You know.
Congressman Tom Lolja from the North Dakota Farm Growers. I know our national guys can kind of be a problem every now and then, but you did,
We'll forgive you.
you did, one thing they can do though is count. They're pretty good vote counters. And they're also very good on ethanol policy. I know you mentioned $3 corn earlier, and if we do lose the renewable fuel standard, we certainly will see
But end up with $3
corn. You seem to be pretty good at your estimates or your predictions or your, at least your odds. Could you give us a sense, your odds currently on the House of a repeal of the renewable fuel standard? Just in the House chamber?
You mean that would get rid of it?
Right.
I think
Or severely modify it?
Well, I think for this year, I'd say probably this term, I think we're okay. We have the votes to stop it. But longer term, I'm worried about this because of the split that's developed between corn ethanol and advanced ethanol or cellulosic ethanol and so forth. And we tried to talk to people about this in '07 when they did the energy bill. At the time, you know, they put a limitation on corn ethanol, 15 billion gallons, and then the rest of them were going to come from these advanced biofuels, you know. Well, at the time, they even had higher requirements for cellulosic than what they ended up with. The reason they lowered them was because of us, because Ann Simmons and I talking them into lowering them, and we told them at the time, you still have these too high. But they wouldn't listen. And so now, those things are in the law, and they haven't met those requirements, and we got rid of the tariff on ethanol, and we got rid of the blender credit. And so what's happening now is that advanced biofuel deal is bringing in ethanol from Brazil, which, you know, at the time, we tried to tell people this could happen. Nobody listened to us. You know, and I've been to Brazil a lot, and I'll guarantee you that what Brazil is doing is not any kind of advanced biofuel. They're causing a bigger environmental problem with what they're doing than corn even thought about. But they're getting counted as advanced biofuel because they're burning bagasse to run their plants. Well, the PCA or EPA would have you in jail in one day in America if you try to do what they're doing in Brazil. You know, I guarantee you. So, you know, how we maneuver this problem that we've got between the, you know, we had the environmentalists with us in '07 on corn ethanol. Now we don't. Now they're a problem. And how we maneuver this, I'm not sure. But for now, Shimkus and I and others that are working on this, we think we have it under control.
So the environmentalists are a bigger problem than the national farm growers?
They're doing what? You're not even in the same league. You guys are way above it. So are we getting to the end of the, all All right. We have another meeting to talk about water, believe it or not. But we, Kevin, why don't you
Thank you.
wrap it up?
I'm gonna wrap up by shaking Colin's hand because he's been a great host and he's been a good mentor to me, and I appreciate collaboration. And thanks to all of you as well. You know, we didn't really pick this knowing it was gonna rain, there'd be a bunch of producers